then there's I think, a unique purpose, which is how in our lives, how do we combine the passions that we have, the things that really drive us in life, and the skill sets we have, and how do we take those and combine them into something where we can really make a conscious, meaningful contribution to the world, so that not only are we adding value to the world, but we get to enjoy hopefully some financial benefit from it. But even more importantly than that, we live fulfilled and joyful lives.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Jeremy Kersten Show. Today we're going to be interviewing Gary Smith. He is a business consultant, he is a personal life coach, public speaker, and author. And we're talking about his latest book, which is Purpose-Driven Achievement. This book is all about setting goals and how to go about achieving these goals. It's about fulfilling happiness through purpose in life. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like content like this. Make sure you hit that like button so we can get this message out to more people, and hit the notification bell so you can be notified each time we upload a new episode. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the interview. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Jeremy Kersten Show. Today we are with author, public speaker, and business coach, personal coach, Gary Smith. He is the author of his most recent book, The Purpose-Driven Achievement. And today we're going to be talking about building our purpose, building goals, having passion, finding our passion, goal setting, just a lot of really good, useful information. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be with you, Jeremy. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah. So before we started recording, you were telling me a little bit about kind of how you got into this space from engineering, 20 something years ago. So tell us kind of how you went from engineering into consulting and personal development.
Yeah, I started out, my passion has always been kind of how things work. And from that standpoint, I'm a very process related kind of guy. I mean, if you read through my book or anything, you'll see some flow charts in there. That's sort of the way my mind works. But I started out as an engineer. I spent 25 years in corporate America. About the first half of that was in the engineering field. So I started out, as you'd imagine, at the bottom of the ladder, climbed up to the top of the ladder in engineering, where I was running engineering organizations, and then eventually transitioned into operations management, and was actually, for the last 12 or 13 years, I was in industry. I was running companies for other people. And then 23 years ago, this past June, I stepped out on my own, originally as a business consultant because I come out of the business world. But as I got into it, I found out that a lot of times people were not really, they thought that they needed technical or logistic solutions, but a lot of times they were really dealing with people problems. And so I began working more as a business coach and a personal coach. And then to sort of add more value to the space that I'm in, I started writing books. And as you mentioned, The Purpose-Driven Achievement is the fourth book that I've written. And I'm primarily focused on the personal development space as well as business development. And then I've expanded beyond that into doing professional speaking and training and that sort of stuff. So my real goal is just to help people discover and execute on their purpose, and to really help them find a way to create the lives they've always dreamed of.
Purpose is sometimes debated as being kind of this human construct, that we kind of bring it upon ourselves to try to find purpose and find meaning in our lives and things like that. What is your opinion on kind of where purpose plays its role in our lives?
I think that's a really interesting question, because I think, number one, a lot of times we get so tied up in the underwear of living our lives that we don't even really stop to think about about purpose. And yet purpose is ultimately tremendously important. One of the examples I use sometimes is, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie about Steve Jobs that stars Ashton Kutcher. But when he comes back into Apple the second time and he sort of takes over, he gets rid of all of his board members, and he's sitting in the boardroom, and the only two people are with him are his board chairman and the corporate attorney. And the corporate attorney looks at him and says, "So, Steve, what are we going to do now?" And Steve sort of steeples his fingers, and you see this little smile start to form in the corner of his mouth, and he says, "We're going to make a dent in the universe." And I think when we think about that, I think that there are probably two elements to purpose. One is what I would call a global purpose. I mean, I think if we all get gut level honest with ourselves, that all of us want the world to be a better place because we've lived. We want to leave our own individual mark, and we want to feel when we're at the end of our lives looking back that the world and our families have been a little bit better because we've existed. But then there's I think, a unique purpose, which is how in our lives, how do we combine the passions that we have, the things that really drive us in life, and the skill sets we have, and how do we take those and combine them into something where we can really make a conscious, meaningful contribution to the world, so that not only are we adding value to the world, but we get to enjoy hopefully some financial benefit from it, but even more importantly than that, we live fulfilled and joyful lives. So I think that purpose is something, I think the word is probably overused, but I think it's something that's really, really critical to us finding and living successful, happy lives. If we don't do that, we're just sort of wandering blindly like a mouse in a maze, and a lot of times we never find the cheese.
Yeah, I've heard so many different composing or opposing views on, passion, whether you should seek the kind of work that is a passion of yours, or you should just forget about that and go, make the most money you can. Do you have kind of any insight on where we kind of start to bring those two together, or should we even?
I think we have to, because you can go out and you can work hard and you can make a ton of money, but that doesn't necessarily equate to living a happy and fulfilled life. And when you look at it statistically today, 80% of people hate their jobs. They really do. They hate their jobs. And if there's that large a percentage of people who are not satisfied with the work they're doing, a lot of times when I'm sitting with somebody and I ask them, "Hey, do you really like the work that you do?" "Well, not really." Well, then why do you do it? If it's not something, if you can't roll out of bed in the morning excited about what the day holds for you, why even bother getting out of bed? And I go back, probably back in the 1970s, I met a gentleman who was a very successful businessman. This was like 1975, 76, 77, somewhere around there. And this guy was very successful in business. He was making in the order of $500,000 a month. And the $500,000 a month is a lot of money today. But back in the 1970s, that was a huge amount of money. But I have had the opportunity to have coffee with him one day, and we were chatting about business and everything. And he said, "I know that you're going to be successful. He said, you get out there, you work hard and stuff like that, and you're eventually going to get to a point where money is not an issue." And he said, "I don't mean you're going to have enough money to go out and buy the entire world, but you'll reach a point where your bills are going to be paid, and from a financial perspective, you really don't have much to worry about." So he said, "But here's the question I want to ask you. When you reach that point, what is it that gets you out of bed every morning?" And he said, "My point is that as you live your life, you have to have a purpose that's bigger than money. Money is just a tool. The question is, what are you going to use it for?" And I think that's where we need to be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making money, but if money is your primary motivation, I think you're going to live a very disappointed life.
I think so too. This next question is one that kind of I wanted to ask, because it seemed like a common theme, and something that was greatly important to you. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of speak to it, and kind of to I guess let others know that this particular subject matter where I'm going here in a second is kind of something that you believe is where a lot of this purpose and passion comes from. And that question is, tell us about the importance that faith for you, and or the importance of faith for you, and kind of how it plays a role in your business and personal life, and then how it pertains to creating a purpose and goal setting.
Okay. I mean, faith to me, my Christian faith is everything. It's foundational to my life. It's the way I've tried to live my life. It's the way I've raised my family. And so it's really the foundation that I built everything on. And how it relates to my own purpose is looking at it through the lens of not what do I want to accomplish in life, but what is God speaking to me about? What does God want me to accomplish with my life? I mean, God has been gracious to me. He's gifted me with a unique set of skills that I have to be able to help people. But my constant thought and my constant prayer and my constant thinking is, God, how do I use those skills to reach other people, to help them be fulfilled in the lives that that they live, and hopefully in that process, through the relationships that I build, that I can point people to God and to Christ as the real foundation. And so when people ask me about, oftentimes I take people through the process of creating a purpose statement. And sometimes people will come back and say, well, do you have a purpose statement? And I said, yeah, it's just one sentence. I want to live a life that's centered on Jesus Christ, and I want to make a positive difference in the lives of other people such that they will be drawn to him. And so how does that apply every day in my business? It's living a life and building a business that's built on integrity, that's committed to doing the right things, and to never sacrifice that integrity for the growth of the profitability of my business. I'm about adding value to people. Money comes second. There's sometimes when it comes, there's sometimes when it doesn't come. And I've reached a point where it doesn't really matter. The money's going to be there if I keep doing the right things.
Why do so many people feel like they get stuck in life?
I think that what happens is that, I mean, think about the fast-paced society that we live in. And we confuse being busy with making progress. You can be busy. You can be busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and accomplish absolutely nothing when it comes to your life. But I think what happens is that we get caught up in that rat race. It's like sort of the picture of the hamster on the wheel, and he's going like crazy, but he's not going anywhere. And I think what happens is that we get so caught up in, well, I have to do these things every day. I have to get up and I have to go to work and I have to go to the grocery store, and my kids have to go to baseball practice and all of that sort of stuff. And it's not that that stuff isn't necessary and that it's not important, but we don't take the time to step back and ask ourselves some of the foundational questions, like, when it's all said and done, what do I want my life to count for? Why am I here? Why did God put me on this planet? He didn't put me here just to occupy space and suck up oxygen and sort of, float between the bookends of my birth and my death. He put me here for a reason, but I'm the one who has to be intentional about finding that reason. And until I become intentional, I'm going to be sort of stuck and feel like I'm just spinning my wheels and I'm going nowhere.
Yeah. So a lot of the book, well, part of your book is about clarity. How do we get clear on a plan of action?
Well, I think it starts with finding your purpose. And that's going to be different things to different people. For me, early on in my life, it was spending a lot of time, in prayer and, studying the Bible and looking at the skill sets and just asking God for wisdom to be able to figure out, ultimately what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And once we understand what our purpose is, then we have to answer another question, which is why. It's sort of like purpose is the vehicle we're going to drive, but the why is the gas in the tank that's going to take us from where we are to where we want to be. And I think that's really important to, to understand that, because when you're, no matter what you're doing, when you're pursuing anything in life, there are going to be challenges, and there are going to be situations where when you wake up in the morning, you go and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, why in the world am I doing this? And when you ask yourself that question, you better have an answer. And that's where the energy part of things, the energizing of that purpose comes in. But then once we get to that point, once we understand what our purpose is, and we're excited about achieving that purpose, then we have to start asking other foundational questions like, okay, what does the realization of my purpose look like? What goals do I need to set? What things do I need to do? What things do I need to achieve in order to be able to see that purpose fulfilled? And that leads us to, setting hopefully some long-term big picture goals. But then the thing that I find a lot of times with people is that they look at those things and they'll look at a goal that's maybe 3, 4, 5 years out, and it looks so enormous to them that they think to themselves, oh, I could never achieve that. And so they, now that, because they haven't put a plan in place, because they don't have any practical way to achieve the goal really isn't a goal, it's just a wish. But if they'll take the time to begin breaking things down and say, okay, if I have a goal that's a year out there, let's break it down into chunks to say, what do I need to achieve this quarter? What do I need to achieve this month? What do I need to achieve this week? What do I need to achieve today? And as we were talking about a little bit earlier, Jeremy, it's getting to that point of being so granular that I know, what do I have to do today, right now, to achieve a goal that may be a year, 2 years, 3 years out there. And I think when we do that, we get a lot of benefit from it, because number one, we know what we have to do. But the real key to it is that we've taken that giant goal and we've broken it down into really, really tiny baby steps that we need to take, because the only thing I may need to do today is to send an email or make a phone call. And that's where two other key words come into play. The first is discipline, and the other one is consistency. You have to discipline yourself to begin doing that process, and then you have to develop the consistency to do it day after day after day after day. And when we do that, and we do it for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, at the end of 6 months, when we turn around and look back, it's just phenomenal what we've achieved, because those little baby steps build and build and build, and we begin to build that self-confidence muscle that says, I can do this, because I've already got 6 months of history saying I've accomplished it. And so when we get granular like that, so we take our purpose, we have the energy behind it, we define the long-term goals, and then we boil everything down to, what do I need to do today? And then we execute on that plan. That's where ultimately success comes from.
Yeah. I liked in your book that, after every chapter, you had an action plan, you had like a little bit of homework to do. And a lot of it did come back to what you said a minute ago, which is something I wanted to get back to, which is the why. I think you might have quoted in your book that famous Simon Sinek quote, start with why. But yeah, it's something that we've all kind of heard. What are some examples of what that why looks like? I mean, we've got legacy, right, to our peers and our family. We've got just personal gratification. What are some other examples of why we really need to climb that mountain?
Well, I think, getting back to what we talked about before, as far as my personal faith is concerned, I mean, one of the major reasons I'm doing it is when I die and I stand before God, I want him to look at me and say, hey, you weren't perfect, but you done good. And I want to, I want to be able to leave a legacy for my children. And it's not just a financial legacy, but it's a legacy of a life well lived, and a life that's lived on purpose. That to me are some of the real key things. But one of the exercises that I take people through is and it takes a little while to do, but if you imagine yourself being 90 years old, and imagine what you're going to look like when you're 90 years old. Get that picture firmly planted in your mind. And then imagine what you're going to feel like when you're 90 years old. and really begin to, if you really think hard about it and really begin to embody the emotions and the physical appearance and stuff. And then at 90 years old, imagine yourself being terminally ill and your doctor has just left your bedside and said, you've got less than 24 hours to live. As you look back on your life, ask yourself some foundational questions like, what are the things that I've accomplished in life that I'm most proud of? What are the things that I've done in life that I'm absolutely ashamed of? What are the things, like the relationships that I've had? What are the quality of the relationships that I've had with my spouse, with my children, with my friends, with my work associates? How would I make things different if I had the ability to do it again? And there's probably 100 different questions that you can ask yourself. But as you honestly begin to answer those questions, you begin to find the threads of who you are as a person. And that's where you can begin to take those threads and begin to weave them together. That will become the tapestry for the rest of your life. So the question becomes is, when it's all done and said and done, and you've tied off that last knot on the tapestry, what's that tapestry look like for you and why?
Next thing I want to talk about is failure, because anytime that we start any endeavor, whether small steps or large, we're certain to come across some failures. So what should be our attitude towards those?
I think the mantra for me is that if you've learned anything from it, it's really not a failure. It's a learning experience. One of the things that I struggle with early on, and I think we all do, because as human beings, when we fail, what do we tend to do? We tend to beat ourselves up. And you know what? I can stand in front of the mirror and say, why did you do that? That was so stupid. How could you have been so dumb? And guess what? When I ask myself a question like that, my mind can come up with all kinds of reasons why I'm stupid. But if I look at it from the standpoint, and I think it's all about the quality of the questions that we learn to ask ourselves. If I look at a failure in my life and say, what is it that I can learn from this? What lesson do I need to take away from this so that I will get better, so I'll improve, so I won't make the same mistake again? My mind can come up with lots of lessons that I can learn. And if I've learned something, then it's really not a failure. It's just a learning experience. But I think that we have to realize that failure is part of life. And we just have to learn to accept that. Nothing that we, there's what's the old saying, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. And so there are going to be times when situations are going to change. There are going to be times when we have to deal with difficult relationships. There's going to be times when we can't achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves and we sort of get ourselves off of track. But then we have to sit back and say, you know what? Plans change, decisions don't. I decided that I was going to accomplish this. And despite the setback or the failures that I've had, I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to say, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? And I think that's where the why of your purpose, that energy that you have that's driving you, comes into play, because the energy is telling you, just keep on, keep on, keep on. Don't give up, keep pushing. And when you do, you build that sort of massive action muscle that just allows you to begin to blow through your failures. And it just means that you're one step closer to achieving your goal. And I think a lot of times, the closer we get to that finish line of having that goal, the more failures we're likely to encounter, because we're pushing ourselves, we're pushing our limits, and there's nothing wrong with that. Learn to embrace failure as part of life.
Yeah, and something you said a second ago, what was it? Plans change, but decisions don't.
Right.
Okay. So I want to take that concept, and we're talking about, goal setting, tackling huge objectives, but where do we start to draw that line to say, you know what, this isn't working. I'm actually going to throw in the towel on this one.
I think that's one of the things that we have to be careful about, is that if we're pursuing a long-term goal, I think a lot of times people want to cast those long-term goals in concrete, and you can't. You can plan the next 6 to 12 months and pretty much put that in concrete. After that, everything has to be in sand, because you need to be open to things that are going to change. Because you might have a direction that you're taking, but what happens when God comes along and drops an opportunity in your lap? You need to be able to evaluate that and make the appropriate changes, but we always have to do it with that key purpose in mind. If we're really serious about achieving that purpose, we need to evaluate every opportunity and every potential change in the light of, is it going to take me closer to my purpose? It may take me on a different road, but am I still going to move out and achieve that purpose in my life? And if the answer to that is, yeah, it's going to take me to the purpose, it's a better use of my skills, maybe it'll get me there a little bit quicker, then those are the things we need to think about when we're making changes. So change is not necessarily a bad thing. A classic example of that is after I had been in business for about 10 years, my mother came down with dementia, and she could no longer live on her own. And so I became her primary caregiver. She actually moved into the house here with me and my wife. And for 7 years, she lived here and I had to take care of her. Did that change my life as far as I had to go back and restructure some of the goals that I needed to achieve? Absolutely, it did. It had a huge impact on my life. Did it change my decision to achieve my purpose? Absolutely not. Didn't dissuade me for 1 minute. So we need to have that degree of flexibility in being able to do things. And I think the other thing that plays into that, Jeremy, is, and I talk about it in the book, and that is a corrective action process, because we're going to be in the process of doing things in there, and we need to be constantly asking ourselves what's working and what's not working. You may come up with a marketing plan for something and get into it and find out after 3 or 4 months that you're not getting the results that you want. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to throw in the towel? You're going to keep doing the same thing and getting the same results? Or are you going to reevaluate what's going on and saying, okay, this is not working. What can we do? How do we go about achieving this? And you got to get creative about looking at things and being willing to sometimes take those side streets, take a different approach in order to be able to see those things happen.
So in other words, the road to your purpose can look many different ways.
Yeah. And it's rarely, I think sometimes we see things, that I'm here and my purpose is over here and there's a straight line in between the two. Let me tell you, it ain't so. Yeah. You're going to take lots of detours and run into dead ends that you're going to have to turn around and come back from, but that to me is the exciting part of the process, is that I wake up in the morning and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know what I'm trying to accomplish, but the only thing I can do is control what I do. I can't control the results necessarily that what I'm doing will produce. All I can do is evaluate the results and then respond accordingly. But that to me is the exciting part of it. It's the joy in the journey kind of process, where I'm not looking so much to celebrate the end goal or the victory when I get to the achievement of my goal as I am about enjoying the process every single day.
Yeah, I think the process is one area that a lot of people, including myself, sometimes struggle with. You got your eyes on the prize so much, and it's doing the daily tasks of work that sometimes don't show any type of results right away. And it can be disheartening and kind of throw you off and make you think that maybe this isn't working. So yeah, I think you're right. Having that purpose is going to bring you through all of those times of trouble, for sure. At the end of your book, purpose-driven achievement, you talk about celebration. So let's talk about kind of what that looks like and why we should be doing it for ourselves throughout the journey.
I think that we need to constantly celebrate, if you will, because I think it's important for us to recognize the little achievements in life, recognize the progress that we're making. And it's not just the progress toward a goal, but it's the progress in who we're becoming as people. One of my mentors, John Maxwell, has what he calls the law of the lid. And he said, imagine yourself being in a jar with the lid on top of it. And that lid on the jar is the ceiling that you have artificially created for yourself. And you're never going to be able to push that lid up until you become someone different. And so celebrating the things, looking back and seeing what skills have I developed? How has my mindset changed over a period of time? How have my relationships with other people changed? How has my caring toward others changed? How am I progressing? And I think it's important for us to be able to celebrate those little things. And it doesn't have to be like, well, I'm going to go on a world trip because I became a little bit better person. But it could just be something like, hey, I'm just going to go out and take a walk and enjoy nature for a couple of hours. Or I'm going to grab my wife and I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A and grab a sandwich and just sit down and just talk about the things that I've experienced. I think that those are the types of things, those little celebrations are what really, really, help us. And it's learning to appreciate the small things in life. I think it was Tony Robbins one time said that, he said, what would you rather have? Would you rather have 20% growth in 1 year? Or would you rather have 1/10 of 1% growth every day? And when you multiply it out, the 1/10 of 1% growth is hugely greater than 20% in a year. But do we take the time to appreciate that 1/10 of 1% progress that we make every day? If we do that, we'll be happy people. And happy people are always more productive.
Absolutely. Gary, let's give some of the listeners a couple quick little actionable items that they can do today after listening to this interview. What's something that they can do other than going and checking out your book, of course, where the better bulk of the information is, but what are some things that can get the wheels kind of spinning for them?
Well, I think first step is to get serious about your life and realize that you're the one who's in charge. God has put you on this earth, and he can give you some promptings and stuff. But bottom line is we need to be intentional about what we're doing. So, what I recommend is, get yourself a dedicated notebook and spend some time thinking about your life and really asking yourself, and being honest with yourself in your responses to serious questions of why am I here? What is it that I really want my life to be about? And use that as the foundational thing, and then answer that second question with okay, when I've identified things, the second question is why do I want to achieve that? Why do I want to achieve that purpose? What's important to me in doing that? And then, I would go beyond that and say, how do I use the skills and the passions that I have? How can I employ those things? And what gaps exist in my life? What are the things that I need to either improve upon, or what things do I need to learn? And who ultimately is the person I need to become? And if you start taking some of those basic steps, and if you're really willing to be honest with yourself, which for some people is a real struggle, because as human beings, we are great rationalizers. We can rationalize a lot of our own bad behavior. But if we really allow ourselves the time to get gut level honest with ourselves, and not from the standpoint of beating ourselves up, but looking at it from the perspective of it is what it is. Where I am in life now is just where I am. And how I got here has nothing to do with where I go from here. But when we start to answer those questions, we begin to get a sense of who we are and what is really meaningful to us in life. And that's what I would recommend as a great starting point for people.
Excellent. Gary, is there any other kind of tidbit of information you want to add real quick?
I would just say, never give up on yourself. So much of the time we look at life through the negative aspect of saying, I can't do that, or that's not possible. One of the things I learned early on in my career as an engineer is it's not a matter of whether it can be done or not. It's a matter of how do I go about doing it. And so, if you begin to look at things through that positive light to say, it's not a matter of if it can be done or if it can't be done, it's going to get done. Am I going to be the one to do it? And how do I go about doing it?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, it does take a certain level of faith and definitely persistence and discipline to see that out. But ultimately, that I think that is the winning mindset. Gary Smith, thank you so much for coming on today. Again, guys, the latest book is Purpose Driven Achievement. He does have a few other books as well in the portfolio. But Gary, thank you so much for coming on the Jeremy Kersten Show today and sharing all your wisdom with all of our listeners.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. And Gary, where can people find you?
Best place is, just my name, GaryLSmith.com. They can find everything that they need from there. There's links to my YouTube channel and my books and everything. And I'd certainly welcome hearing from your listeners. If there's anything I can do to help, please reach out.
All right. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this interview with Gary Smith. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Be sure to check out Gary visiting his website. Also, watch some more videos here on the Jeremy Kersten Show by clicking here or clicking here, and just to see what else we got. I hope you guys have subscribed already. Hitting that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, notification bell. Yeah, I've already said it all. Hey, take care, guys. Peace.